Did you know that there was an MLB player who hit the ball so hard, everyone he faced was literally afraid of him? Crazy, right? Well, Frank Thomas, a 6'5", 270-pound behemoth, could hit the ball over 500 feet, with speeds of over 100 miles an hour, placing fear of getting knocked out in everyone he faced. Although the reality behind his incredible strength output lied in a skill not many power hitters have been able to obtain, allowing him to dominate baseball for 19 years, win multiple MVP awards, and grant him an induction into the Hall of Fame. But to truly understand how he became one of the most frightening players in MLB history, we have to go back to the beginning. Growing up, he was a freak athlete. In high school, he was a star tight end in football and a power hitter at the plate, amassing a .440 average and guiding his team to a state championship as a senior. But despite his excellence on the field, he went undrafted, much to his surprise, stating, "I saw a lot of guys I played against get drafted, and I knew they couldn't do what I could do. No matter how well I've done, people have misunderstood me for some reason." So instead, he decided to accept a scholarship offer to play football at Auburn University. Then, once on campus, the school's baseball coach, Hal Baird, recognized his raw power and immediately offered him a spot on the team, which meant over the next couple of years, he would bounce back and forth between the two sports, but it was clear his heart was in baseball. He spent the summer of 1988 in the Cape Cod Baseball League, the most prestigious summer league for MLB hopefuls. It was there he began to etch his name amongst the nation's best collegiate prospects, grabbing the attention of the Chicago White Sox, who decided to select him with their first pick the following year. A dream come true for him, but he understood this was only half the battle. Now in the professional game, everyone fighting for a big league spot was once a standout college player too. But it didn't take long for him to distinguish himself from the rest. The following year at spring training, he was tearing up the Grapefruit League, starting off 8 for 16 with 2 homers and 7 RBIs in 20 plate appearances, giving manager Jeff Torborg something to think about when it came to selecting his opening day roster. But ultimately, he was left off it and was tasked with starting the season at AA. At this point, Frank believed he was ready to be the everyday first baseman for the White Sox. It was starting to feel like high school again when he was overlooked. Although it wouldn't take long before he got his shot at the majors. You see, the two players who manned first base for the Sox between 1988 to 1990 were Greg Walker and Carlos Martinez, two players who failed to spark any sort of offense within the lineup. That's why, with the club narrowly hanging on to their playoff hopes in early August, trailing the Oakland Athletics by only 3.5 games, Frank was called up to the majors for the first time. He had 0 big league appearances to his name, yet everyone knew his arrival would yield them great power, and it didn't take long before he showcased just that.
Setting up outside, and the pitch is hit a long way into right field. Get out! And here at the wall, can't get it. Out there, Thomas being held up at third. He's got a triple and 2 RBIs.
This triple marked just the beginning of his offensive prowess. Down the stretch, he played 60 games, managing numerous clutch hits, 7 homers, and a .330 batting average. By doing so, he took full control of the first base position and was slotted in as the regular cleanup hitter. But unfortunately, his efforts would go to waste as the Athletics ran away with the division in September, sending the White Sox home despite winning 94 games on the year. But their brush with the playoffs proved they were close to being a contending ball club, especially with his arrival. Now all that was left to do was prepare for his first full season in 1991, an opportunity he never looked back on. To start off April, he was hot. On the 22nd, he hit his first homer of the year, a towering shot to deep center field, which was coincidentally the first home run hit inside the Sox's new stadium. This became a regular occurrence all season long, finishing the year with 32 long balls, a .318 average, and 109 runs driven in, which meant at just 23 years old, he was thrusted into the spotlight with his name now in the conversation amongst the game's best players, finishing third behind Cecil Fielder and Cal Ripken Jr. in MVP voting. Yet with this recognition, he never felt any pressure, stating how he played football in front of 80,000 at Auburn, so he knew what he was doing at the plate was no fluke at all. And over the next few seasons, he continued to evolve into every pitcher's worst nightmare. Sure, he could hit the ball 500 feet, but what made him truly special was how complete of a hitter he was, thanks in large part to his elite plate discipline. This was a skill that allowed him to not only hit for immense power, but also use each part of the field, maintain a high batting average, and draw an incredible amount of walks. In fact, his 138 figure in 1991 was the most since Harmon Killebrew and Jim Wynn logged more 22 years prior. These attributes helped him transcend into a superstar in his early 20s, but it wasn't until 1993 before he solidified himself as the best in the league, hitting significantly more home runs than the previous 2 years, but more importantly, in a tight division race in September, he came through with numerous clutch hits, propelling the Sox to their first division crown in a decade. It was a nice change of pace for Frank to have something to look forward to after Game 162 other than relaxing on a beach. But he understood not to get it twisted, because it wouldn't be smooth sailing to try and eliminate the reigning World Series champions, the Toronto Blue Jays, a team which rolled back practically the same squad from their championship in 1992, with the additions of Paul Molitor in the offseason and Rickey Henderson at the trade deadline. Together, they were striving to become the first team since the Yankees in the 70s to win back-to-back World Series titles. It was up to Frank and his boys from the South Side to navigate through the immense pressure to succeed, a time where many players have gone to sports therapy to help calm their nerves in these intense situations. This is an instance where today's sponsor BetterHelp can make a difference. Therapy is a powerful tool that can help you in any situation of your life, and especially for athletes. As one myself, it's been difficult at times to deal with the stresses of trying to perform at a high level. That's why I've always benefited with talking to someone throughout my athletic journey. But whether it be for your athletic career, relationship problems, or anything in between, BetterHelp is here to aid us all in achieving enhanced mental health and the tools needed to navigate life's challenges with confidence. All you need to do is fill out a quick questionnaire, and in most cases, they will connect you with the right therapist within a couple of days. But if for any reason you want to switch, you can do so at any time with no extra cost. So instead of being in an endless loop questioning yourself, you can talk to a licensed therapist within the next few days. And by clicking my link in the description or by going to betterhelp.com/greenlight, you get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/greenlight for 10% off your first month. Now back to Frank Thomas. During the first 2 games, the reigning champions overmatched them in all facets of the game. They committed less errors in the field, performed better with runners in scoring position, and overall just seemed to want it more, giving them an early 2-0 series advantage. As for Frank, he was one of the few Sox batters excelling at the plate. In Game 1, down by 2 runs in the 6th, he singled up the middle to put runners on first and second. But Robin Ventura and Ellis Burks were unable to capitalize on the runner in scoring position. This was Frank's only hit of the game because in his other 4 plate appearances, he was walked in each of them, a story which continued in Game 2, drawing another walk and managing 2 base hits, meaning he only recorded an out in 1 of his 9 plate appearances, but it was going to take a lot more to get them back in this series. For starters, they needed to give him more opportunities with men in scoring position. If not, the series wouldn't be lasting much longer. Understanding this, the top of the Sox's lineup started a rally, with 2 runners in scoring position in the 3rd, and Frank due up next.
Hard and through Sprague at 3rd. 1 run comes home. Cora will stop at 2nd.
This hit opened the scoring in the game and kept the rally going in the inning, where they eventually tacked on 5 runs, all they would need to take the contest and give them a glimmer of hope in the series. But in Game 6, the Jays came storming right back and asserted their dominance with a 3-2 lead in the 6th inning. Then, following a Joey Cora groundout, their win probability sat at a comfortable 69%. Things were looking bleak when Frank stepped up to the plate, and the situation continued to worsen when pitcher Todd Stottlemyre worked the count in his favor at 2 balls and 2 strikes. For the 1993 season, he allowed just a .222 average to batters after he got into this count. It was clear that he was in the driver's seat.
That one hit a mile in left center field. Tie game.
As mentioned earlier, Frank had an incredible understanding of the strike zone. So despite being down to his final strike, he didn't divert from his game plan. He knew he could lay off pitches just outside the zone, and if the pitcher made a mistake, in this case Stottlemyre leaving the pitch right down the middle, he knew he could do damage, which is exactly what he did. And once again, his hit was the first of yet another big inning for the Sox, as Lance Johnson took the lead with a 2-run triple to score Ellis Burks and Bo Jackson, helping them even up the series at 2 games apiece. At this point, it was starting to look up for the Sox. However, this is where their comeback aspirations came to a halt.
Hit in the air to right field. Carter has room. and the Blue Jays are going back to the World Series.
After tying up the series, it seemed like the momentum was shifting in their favor, but ultimately the players on the Jays roster already had playoff experience, while the Sox had little, and it showed in their defensive game. During their 2 wins, they didn't commit a single error, but in their 4 losses, they surrendered 7, including at least 1 in each and 3 in the clincher. Giving the reigning champions extra outs to play with was the main contributor to their defeat, which was an unfortunate fact because on the offensive side, Frank was an on-base machine, recording 6 hits and 17 at-bats while also walking 12 times. He was the Sox's most impactful player, although it was time to head home, regroup, and come back with vengeance the following season. And whether it be him maturing into his game or the sour taste of defeat still in his mouth, his 1994 campaign was poised to be one for the ages. But sadly, it ended prematurely when the season was cancelled due to the strike in August. At that point, his numbers were already on par with his regular production, but if we average it out to a full season's worth of games, we can discover that he was on pace for roughly 54 homers, 144 runs driven in, and 156 walks. Mind-numbing stats to think about, especially that walk figure, since it would have been the 4th highest single-season tally in MLB history. But what was most intriguing about his season was his quest for the Triple Crown. To obtain this feat, you must lead the league in homers, post the highest average, and drive in the most runs. Before the season was called off, he trailed Ken Griffey Jr. for the home run lead by only 2, batting average by a mere 6 points, and RBIs would have been the biggest challenge, 11 behind Kirby Puckett, but for Frank, he would have only needed 2 games to erase that deficit. It was a shame he never got the opportunity to achieve this rare feat, and to make matters worse, the postseason was also cancelled, meaning their first place position held no meaning. This became especially tough to digest because the White Sox found little success throughout the rest of the 90s, mainly due to poor decision making when recruiting players. Nothing more obvious than the fact that owner Jerry Reinsdorf opted to sign Jamie Navarro over Roger Clemens due to concern over his shoulder, despite him making it clear he wanted to pitch for them. So instead, he went to the Blue Jays and won back-to-back Cy Young awards, while Navarro was one of the worst pitchers in the game throughout his time in Chicago. This was just one example of many failed business practices they took part in, but another reason why they struggled was due to Frank's decline during the 98 and 99 seasons. During these 2 years, he lost the majority of his power, hitting 29 homers in 160 games in 98, then only 15 in 135 the following year. It was a fall-off most were expecting. The 99 season was his age 31 campaign, and typically players of his stature don't age particularly well. However, he argued his decline had nothing to do with age, but rather lingering foot issues. He had a corn on his toe and a bone spur, which his doctor described as the biggest he had ever taken out. By undergoing both procedures, he was confident that he could prove to everyone he was still capable of being one of the game's best hitters, which makes it no surprise he came out of the gate firing on all cylinders, ultimately setting career-high marks in numerous offensive categories, including homers at 43, RBIs at 143, and hits at 191, helping him be named Comeback Player of the Year. But his return to stardom was not only an impressive show of discipline to prove everyone wrong, but also a key bonus to the Sox's lineup, which found their way into the playoffs for the first time in 7 years. When he last featured in October Baseball, he was entering his prime at 25. Now he was 32. He was still the same man, but this time his production would be different, as he went hitless during the 3 games against the Seattle Mariners, and without his offensive production, the Sox were swept with ease, which meant it was yet another year passed by without achieving his goal of winning the coveted World Series trophy. He knew his time was running thin, so he hoped that the inconsistencies he suffered over the previous 2 years were behind him. However, his career would never reach the same consistency it once had. In 2001, he tore his tricep on this diving attempt at first base, keeping him out for the rest of the season after only 20 games. In 2004, he suffered a fractured left ankle, holding him to only 74 games, and in 2005, it was again his ankle causing the problem. In fact, he called the pain's intensity a 10 out of 10. Now, it it was undeniable that when he was on the field, he was still a force to be reckoned with. When averaging out his production over these 5 years to one season's worth of opportunities, it would equate to roughly 40 homers and 100 runs driven in. Production any team would be unfortunate to miss. However, in 2005, they didn't need him. This season, they were the most dominant team in baseball, winning 99 games, punching their ticket into October where they wouldn't make the same mistakes as their previous few trips. In the divisional round, they swept the Boston Red Sox, needed only 5 games to send the Angels packing in the championship series, and then took the World Series comfortably after the required 4 games.
Uribe charges, throws, out! And the White Sox have won the World Series!
After getting drafted at 21 years old, it was always a dream of his to win the World Series. He worked effortlessly year after year to achieve this goal, but he was never able to realize it. So for the Sox to win the World Series with him peering on from the disabled list was a tough pill to swallow. And to make matters worse, after 16 incredible years with the club, the Sox's front office decided to buy out his contract for the 2006 season. This move wasn't necessarily out of the blue. At this point, he was struggling to even play half a season, so paying him $10 million didn't make sense. The time had come to part ways with the franchise's greatest player. So with a chip on his shoulder, he decided to take his talents to the West Coast, signing a 1-year deal with the Oakland Athletics. This was a team which made the playoffs each season from 2000 to 2003, but came up agonizingly short in the years following. They were hoping he could revive his career and give them another shot at postseason glory. But to start the season, they were below 500 at the end of May, with Frank's struggles being a main reason why. Through his first 34 games of the season, he was hitting an uninspiring 178 at the plate. But he wasn't worried about his production, saying, "I've done too much in this game to continue to beat myself up, and my average might not be that high, but I can still be a dangerous hitter." He was right. At this stage of the season, he already had 7 homers. His power was still there. He just needed to get more comfortable at the plate, and fittingly, that came when he returned to Chicago for a 3-game set. It was weird to play in front of his once home fans, but nonetheless, being reunited with them was a special moment. It was also at this time when he was reunited with an important piece of hitting equipment, a rusty piece of rebar. This 3-foot 7-pound construction piece was what he used throughout his career in Chicago to practice his swing in the on-deck circle. However, when he was let go by the White Sox, he was unable to grab it before leaving for Oakland. So fittingly, he turned back into his best after being reunited with his beloved steel rod. During his homecoming game, he launched 2 home runs, and even though he was playing for a different team, White Sox fans still gave him a standing ovation while he rounded the bases. He was just that special for them. And now, with this breakout game under his belt, he continued to grow into the season, ultimately finishing the year as the league leader in almost every offensive category for the Athletics. So as you would expect, they were able to win the division with ease to square off against the Minnesota Twins in the divisional round, and it didn't take long for Frank to take the spotlight.
Santana deals and Frank hits it to deep left field in the corner. White going back right down the line. Fair or foul in the corner. It is gone. Home run, and Frank Thomas has given the A's the lead. On set pitch, and Frank hits it to deep left. White back. White at the track. He's going to watch 2 home runs today for the Big Hurt, and the A's have taken a 3-1 lead.
In the winter, he was a player nobody wanted. In the spring, he was the worst batter in the game, but now in the postseason, he made his mark with 2 huge home runs. The first to open the scoring, and the second to protect their lead in the top of the 9th, which turned out to be vital as the Twins scored in the bottom half of the inning before Houston Street was able to close the door and take Game 1 by a narrow 1-run win, setting the stage for the rest of the series where they were going to make quick work of the Twins, punching their ticket into the next round after the required 3 games. At 38 years old, this was likely going to be his last chance to play in the World Series, but with this group of guys, he was confident heading into their matchup against the Detroit Tigers, a team which boasted a top 10 offense in terms of runs per game, but it was their pitching staff which made them the most threatening. They had the Rookie of the Year in Justin Verlander, other quality starters in Nate Robertson, Kenny Rogers, and Jeremy Bonderman, as well as a shutdown bullpen. And together, they were able to limit the Athletics' bats to just 9 runs over 4 games to take the series. For 4 straight years between 2000 to 2003, the Athletics were eliminated in Game 5 of the ALDS. Now in 2006, they were finally able to escape the first round, only to be embarrassed by the Tigers. It was a disappointing finish for everyone within the organization, and especially for Frank, who wound up going hitless in the 4 games, including getting out 6 times with runners in scoring position. Now at 38, most wouldn't have been surprised if he hung up the cleats, but he was still amongst the best hitters in the game, and more importantly, he started the season at 487 home runs. An already crooked number, but eclipsing 500 would guarantee him a first ballot induction into the Hall of Fame, and it only took him a few months with the Toronto Blue Jays to achieve this.
Deep to left field, back, and number 500.
By topping 500 home runs, he became just the 21st player to do so, although he was the first to reach this mark and get ejected in the same game, as he was dismissed in the 9th inning for arguing balls and strikes. But back to it, this homer was just one of 26 he hit that year, as he produced yet another quality campaign despite being one of the oldest in the game. It wasn't until the following season before his age truly started to show. In 71 games stretched between Toronto and then back with Oakland after he was released, his offensive numbers took a significant step back, all the way to the point of being below average. Then, after missing all of 2009 to injuries, he decided it was time to retire. Frank's 19 years in Major League Baseball was a power-infused journey. He even garnered the nickname the Big Hurt because of the damage he inflicted on opposing pitchers. But perhaps the most impressive part of his career was his ability to do so without the need of performance-enhancing drugs during the peak of the steroid era. This is why his 521 career home runs, more walks than strikeouts, and a .301 batting average are all the more eye-popping, and allowed him to be inducted into the Hall of Fame after his first year on the ballot. Thank you for making it all the way to the end of the video. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe. We are almost at 20,000 and I would love to have you on board. And if you would like to learn about a pitcher who, because of a 1 in a million anomaly, was forced to only throw the craziest pitch in baseball in order to save his career, then click the video on your screen.